Good. Right, good morning, everyone. It's been, I don't know, I think it's been about 4 months since we did one of these. We actually pushed back the last one because we wanted to show you a lot of the Vincent stuff, which we've been working on. So hopefully that lands well. But in terms of agenda, and there are still people still joining, usual sort of welcome. Talk about a little bit about what we're up to internally, give you a view of investment, etc. Run through all the various product streams, a little bit about what's coming, what we're working on, what we've just finished in each area. Jen's going to talk about a bit about change management, which is always useful. Whilst technology is super important, it's only one bit of the pie to achieving benefits. Stu's going to talk a little bit about what we're doing in terms of getting ShareDo into your organisations, both for the first tranche and your subsequent sort of practice group rollout, making that quicker, and then I'll wrap up. We're getting better over the years. I'm tempted to make a strong bet that we're actually going to be ahead of time this time. So we'll see. Okay, so in terms of business review, a little bit of, I guess, an insight into ShareDo as it was, Clio Operaate as it's becoming, and Clio Enterprise as it's moving towards, a little bit of insight what's going on in our business. But as always, on behalf of all the team, right, and myself, like a huge thank you to everyone, all the customers. We really appreciate the investment and the trust that you place in us. Running a service business, whether it's a SaaS business like ours or a legal service provider like you guys, it's always tough, right, to keep the the level of service as high as you want. But nevertheless, we strive, and those who know me, I take it incredibly personally. About hitting the highest bar. So as always, really appreciate the trust and the investment you place in our service and platform. So thank you. We did this slide. I mean, the last couple of, I think it was March user forum, we spoke about the acquisition by Clio and the investment that was going to come. I'm just going to, sort of almost loop back to that and see where we are. These numbers are fairly approximate. I'm not quite sure, if I'm honest, exactly how many people joined us during 2025. It might have been more, it might have been slightly less, but around that sort of number. And really the sort of key investment areas and focus, I suppose, was in engineering, security, and customer success. Now, it does take some time to yield all those benefits. So particularly when we're obviously staggering hiring throughout 2025. So I think some of the benefits of bringing those people on board and training them up and all that are still being realised, and hopefully that translates ultimately into service level performance, faster product velocity, better education, etc. But I mean, I think the key benefits for me, which is not something you always talk about, is in our general overall security posture in 2025. And I think, as I said, I don't know, maybe in the September user forum, for me, that's something you don't talk about, but nevertheless, it was my biggest worry when I used to run ShareDo. 2026, the level of investment, I think ramps up slightly, but it's still very, very significant. And it's really about building out across the entire organisation, building leadership out as we scale the customer base. Like, we need more leaders to look after you guys, right? So we've just welcomed Julian as the GM for APAC. There's a new GM in North America to arrive, and various other leaders across the business. But that's not to say that the investment stops there. Big increase in product management. What does that mean? It means we've got more people who can deliver better quality features, product features to you guys, but actually engage with you more to make sure that they're landing correctly. A lot of investment in partners, professional services, and Customer success. Where do I see the key benefits in 2026? Spelling mistake. Service levels. Service level. Improving the service levels, right? We always need to strive to be better responsiveness, faster tickets, etc., right? A lot of AI capabilities coming both within the platform, so AI first from some of the modular tools that we have, but also for the end users, and I'm going to demonstrate some of that shortly. Goes with Onboarding Accelerated and scalability and all that sort of stuff. Okay. We try to make these a little bit interactive. So I don't know, there is some chat already. It's morning, etc. So if anyone in my team wants to shout out or respond to questions, but if you want to put them in the chat, people will respond. And if there's anything you want to call out, then I'm sure someone will do that to me. Okay, so I'm going to introduce, I think it was in the September one, or maybe October, whenever it was. We basically said, look, we're going to go through a rebrand. So I'll talk about that, but also talk about Clio for Enterprise. We are still ShareDo in the UK and APAC markets. In North America, we're becoming Operaate, and then gradually in the UK and APAC regions will become Operaate. So always makes me laugh. Some of our oldest customers still refer to us as sliced bread, so they're almost going to have to skip ShareDo and go straight to Clio Operaate. But I don't know. You'll start to see the brand Clio for Enterprise, and really that is a brand that registers intent for Clio, who's traditionally been known in the sort of SMB space, to very much focus on you guys, right? We were the first stepping stone, and VLEX and Vincent were the second stepping stone. And this has been a bulk of our R&D, not the bulk, a good, I like the comment, charity swear jar. It will take some time, right? As I mentioned, some of the oldest clients still refers to as sliced bread. Anyway, I guess it signals an intent to bring together your sort of, your one of the leading LM-powered, research-powered platforms in Vincent, and your sort of business process management, case and matter management solution that was previously known as ShareDo. And I'm actually quite excited about this from a product perspective, and more about the opportunities that it gives to you guys. And I'll describe why. So for those that know me well, I'm a bit of a process geek. And when I looked at an end-to-end process that we're constantly trying to optimize within law firms, almost ShareDo had to stop. If this is the process from end to end or the workflow from end to end, ShareDo had to stop at a point. It couldn't go into the practice of law. Now, what we've been doing from a product perspective, we're not there yet, but we're moving on pretty fast, is pulling the two platforms together to a greater or less degree, which actually opens up the opportunity to optimize almost every bit of the process, if you should so wish. Whilst there's a bit of finance version 3 work to be done to achieve like the full billing capability, actually the span of the platform as it is today, and maybe I'll be loose on that, as it will be sort of around February, I suppose, is it can cover off an awfully large amount of business processes. And again, we're in the business of providing tools and accelerators and all that sort of stuff for you guys to take advantage of that. And I'll tell you what I find quite interesting is like within our world where we're playing around with the modelers, the studios, and there's a Vincent studio that allows you to design their workflows. We're constantly coming up with new ways of using these tools. I'm going to be super excited to see what other people do. So I will just talk about this integration at a very high level, and then I'll do a demo. Hopefully it goes well. So we're aiming to do this in 3 stages. And the first phase, which we're pretty certain we're going to finish by the end of February, I would describe as almost integration at the UX. So I can open up Vincent from ShareDo Operaate. I can pass it documents, and I can use its output or store its output in your underlying document management system and perform maybe a few other actions. And we're passing context such as jurisdiction, etc., across in that. This will make more sense when I demo. Actually, I should have demo on this slide. Anyway, all good. Phase 2 is where I think it gets exciting, and I will I'll do a demo and then I'll spend a bit longer on phase 2 as a thing. But everything I'm going to show you in the demo, I think it yields really good business benefits, albeit I'm not a lawyer, so I'll leave that for you guys to judge, right? But everything that I'll show in the demo in terms of what you can achieve with the user interface, we're aiming to put within Operate's workflow engine. So that, I think, then opens up a huge amount of opportunities to automate things that we've never been previously able to automate. And then finally, phase 3, so workflow, phase 2, some other bits and pieces like embedding it in the new Word add-in. Phase 3 is, I guess, a secret squirrel project, but we'll maybe talk about that in the next user forum. Okay, before I go into the demo, we've got lots of ideas, and actually this slide applies to all areas of product. Yeah, we've got lots of ideas as to how to optimize it, the user journeys that people are going to go across between like an operational system like ShareDo and an LLM pad, research and intelligence tools such as Vincent. But we are also certain that we don't know the answer. So this is really a call to action. We're looking for a few pilot customers to help shape the future of this product feature. We think it'll be available in late February. It will be available in a 7.11, probably 0.1, maybe 0.2 patch. There is, in my opinion, I'll have to ask Dunk, who's been doing a lot of the engineering, but it's a very small patch. I don't think there's any risk associated with it. So we're looking for people. The only caveat is this cannot just be an IT pilot. All of the value lies with your lawyers. Yeah. So if you're interested, speak to Carlos, and we'll start that. We're going to wrap it with a load of training, customer success, etc. We want you to have the best experience, and we're really looking for your input and learnings as part of this. Okay. Let me do a demo. We've gone blue, by the way. It's quite nice. It's quite a nice shade. I think it's called Mountain Blue. We've also got green is the new brand color. The usual, yes, developers environment. So the WOAs, which for those of you who get involved in sort of early product development, WOA stands for whoa. Maybe it might go wrong. So we'll see how we go. Right. Here's ShareDo. I mean, the Vincent integration in many ways follows exactly the same pattern as every other ShareDo integration. For those who configure ShareDo, there are menu commands that you add on. There are page components that you can place on. So again, we'll obviously suggest sort of standards or inject standards, but if you want to play around and put it in different places or deal with it in different ways, that's entirely up to you. There is integration with the document repository. So whether you've got NetDocs or Office 365 or iManage, you can sort of seamlessly go across to Vincent to run all its various research questions and what have you. So there's still a bit of bits and places to go, but I'll run through a couple of scenarios. So in this matter, I'm going to do some personal industry or injury type scenarios, but I've got lots of capabilities. One of the things we're going to add is the broad library search. So all of Vincent is underpinned by this massive legal research library, and you'll see that as I go through and ask various questions. Also in the case of, so I'm going to go and say, actually, I do just want to ask a research question. And I'll just go, what are the essential elements to establish liability in a professional under English law? I tell you what I've noticed the more I start playing with this is how little of the law that I knew. And I think it's really interesting when you embed these things together. So you're running through a process and you can start to do bits and pieces. It sometimes takes a little while to come back as it's basically running through billions and billions. I think there's a couple of billions of legal authorities. So what I'm also going to do is while I'm kicking that off, I'm going to go and ask another question. So the next thing I'm going to do is in my Matter Wiki, I've got some case facts. And I copied this from an American demo actually, so I should change to Miami. But anyway, that's all good. So we're going to talk about a slip and trip, basically. And maybe it's a bit of a mute example, but let's do it nevertheless. So a slip and trip in a store, Sarah was in Miami. So I'm going to take those case facts that I've maybe received as part of this claim. And I could do obviously from claimant or defendant perspective. And I'm going to ask Vincent to build an argument. So in common with other tools of this type, you've got a generic prompt, you can go and ask it to do X, Y, or Z, but you've got this library of workflows. I think we did a demo last thing, so I won't spend too long on this. They do become contextual if you upload documents. I'm going to start with a simple example here. This library is also extensible, so you can go, actually, I want to create unique workflows, Vincent workflows for your individual practice areas if they're not available in this. So I'm going to take those key facts that I had in my case that I took, and I'm going to ask Vincent to help me build an argument and just identify the causes of action. And we'll let that go off and do its thing. Again, I'm doing this from brevity while we go on. And I'll start another one, and then we'll come back and look at this in a second or two. Duplicate. Okay, so next up, I'm going to. As part of this case, I think it's Megacorp, it's Megastore. They provided, maybe I'm skipping various parts of the case lifecycle here. Duncan said, click on the red toast, please, Ben. I think it's fine. It is fine. It just does that every now and again. All right, cool. As part of this, I'm going to skip a bit of the phase life cycle. We basically said, actually, have they changed their policies, or have they reduced the amount of time they're going to look at inspect the store, or what are their health and safety policies? So the next one I'm going to do is go, actually, I want to start to analyse some of the evidence that's been performed on this store. And this time we're going to actually look at some documents. And they helpfully, so this is just inspecting, it's running a query in the same way as the DMS at the matter repository. And I think it's important to know that although it uploads the documents, they don't get stored, particularly, or get stored for underneath your retention policies, which can almost be minutes. So I'm going to go and search for policies. And I can do that directly. I'll keep duplicating towers where I go. I can do that directly if I want from the matter repository and go, here's a policy. And I've got like a 2019 corporate policy and a 2024 corporate policy. But I can also do it within Vincent. I can do all of my sort of arguments and what have you. So when we're giving it documents, it's also able to be a little bit more intelligent in terms of what actions it's recommending and all that good stuff. So I think it's a lot nicer journey. I've done a couple of journeys with sort of facts and what have you, and we'll loop back into those once I kick this off. So it's suggested a bunch of different workflows it can do, but straight away it's gone, okay, policy comparison, create a detailed comparison table highlighting the key differences between the 2019 and 2024 Megasource safety manuals. So let's go do that one. And again, with all of these, it's going across the huge library and analysing bits and pieces. But let's spend a moment on this, and then we'll loop back to some of my other examples. So I tell you what's quite interesting when it's done this. And I've run through a few examples with like different witness statements and incident timelines. So if you're going, actually, is the disparity between witness statements super slick on that stuff. So yeah, we can see actually there's maybe some changes in terms of it was 15 minutes, now it's 30 minutes. Spill response is different. There's different training protocol. So from a legal perspective, they've obviously reduced their health and safety processes, and maybe that will contribute to our assessment of this slip and trip. Okay, let's maybe go back and have a look at some of the other ones I've kicked off. One stage here. I seem to get kicked off. All good, right. So just going back to some of the questions, although quite a simple question, what's actually really important is it's all underpinned in the legal library, the legal research and the legal precedents that you can see on the right-hand side. So huge body of information to go there. And I tell you what, I found it really interesting actually, just from understanding what's going on. And I can always access all of my conversations from the left-hand pane. Did I kick this off? I didn't kick this off, did I? Okay, sorry. The next thing I did was ask it to build an argument, and I gave it my case facts. And said, actually, can you build an argument for that?
and I forgot. It assessed what type of arguments I might want to do, and pulled that through. So we'll kick that off. And then lastly, I asked it to compare a few documents and take it from there. But I can also take these conversations a bit further. So I can say, please, can you draft an email? I don't know if this is a good example, by the way, to the defendant, asking them to explain their rationale for lowering the health and safety standards in the table above. I always think it's interesting there. All the big AI companies, how much money they waste with people like me, who should be Megastore. 2 weeks. Should the email be formal? Off we go. I'm probably massively overrunning at this point, aren't I? Okay. And off it'll go. Start doing that. Build a thing, and plainly human in the loop for all these sort of things. But hopefully some really good taking the workflow we've done potentially or could only optimize so far within ShareDo Operaate, and actually we're now starting to extend out massive use cases. All good. Any questions so far? Yes, there's loads of extra drafting stuff coming as well. All good. I've probably missed loads of stuff, but hopefully you get that's a flavour for where we are. Where the next bits we're adding is really what you do with this content. So let's ignore my research question, which even a very junior paralegal should probably know the answer to. I did some building an argument. Maybe I want to send that out in an email. Maybe I want to store that in my Matter wiki. Maybe it's a key research question that I want to add into the chronology so it's available for every single user. Yeah, there's lots of maybes there about how I'm going to use this information. And plainly, when I was I got this table of assessment. That's a key piece of information that I'm going to want to use across the life cycle of the case. I want to shove that in the DMS maybe, yeah, or use it in a document. So let me go back to my slides. So the bit we're currently working on is, there's obviously a few bits and pieces, snags and what have you, but I think it's pretty solid, and that's thanks to the team of people working on this, or working on the integration rather. So the next bit we're working on is the actions. What do you do with this content? How do you pull it back into your case and make best use of it? I'll skip through this. We've gone through all these bits and pieces. And there will be a couple available by the end of February, or maybe one. But then, yeah, we're going to be adding things like marking it in the chronology, sending it in comments, emails, or bookmarking that content for use within things like the Word plugin. The next piece we're going to be rolling onto is within the ShareDo workflow canvas. You're going to get all of those workflows that you've just seen. So I think that opens up the, and I was clicking in and doing lots of research manually. I think that's probably the primary use case, but actually you can start to streamline a lot of these things. Yeah, you receive all of your witness statements and you ask it to compare for discrepancies automatically, and you present that information to your users without them having to go through those processes. and personally, I think that unlocks a huge amount of opportunities for everyone. It's going to appear within Outlook, within Word, over the coming months, and the drafting capability, I showed you a very small amount of that, is going to increase as well. Oops. So I think that starts to open up a huge amount of opportunities, and there are opportunities for new ways, new service propositions, new streamlined processes that potentially we haven't done or would take a huge amount of time to do previously. Here's just an example of one. You've got a client portal, they upload documents, we run them through Vincent to take a view. We send that view to a lawyer via a task and ask them to take a look. Is it good enough? Raise some fees automatically, etc. I mean, I'll let you envisage what you can do with it. Our job at this stage is to give you the tools in which you can create new legal processes, new legal service propositions, and I'm super excited to see what you guys create. Yeah. Okay. I'm not over time. I could have spent longer. Hopefully that was useful. Hopefully that was useful. Right, I'm going to probably hand over to Phil shortly. That's my prompt to Phil if he's making a cup of tea. I won't. I think everyone's going to talk about this. So I'll just talk a little bit about release 7.11. I think the release I don't know when the release candidate came out. Maybe last week. It is the release candidate is out. It usually takes us 1 or 2 weeks to go to release that to market. All of the product managers, or not all of them, but the subset are doing this user forum. We'll talk about what's in it, so I won't go into it specifically. I would describe release 7.11 as a lot of smaller features and a lot of defect fixes. So it's almost like a big quality of life type release. And it's available within a week or so. There are a lot of chunky things coming down the line, so maybe this is just a good quality of life. That's not to denigrate the value of all of these, whatever. I think it's about 40 odd features, 70 odd defects in this. I think that's you now, Phil.
Awesome. Let's see how seamless we can make this.
Do you want me to do clicky stuff for you?
If you like, that would be quite nice.
Would you like me to leave the stage or give you some light-hearted banter as well?
Always open to some light-hearted banter, to be honest. So you can, as you can see straight away, my slide is on brand.
Yeah.
I had 2 advisories from Ollie, which they're more like a threat, to be honest. They were keep on brand, and also if you take longer than 5 minutes, I'll kick you off the stage. So take that. Take that as an advisory. I think the coolest thing that you showed around the whole VLEX integration, like all the features that we do and where we extend out into other apps, it's always about the context. So to me, you can add a lot more tools to your locker. Like, hey, I'm going to add a new AI capability. I'm going to add whatever it is that you're doing, and increase your fragmented estate across all those like lawyers. Whereas what we're doing is we're sitting in context with the work that you're doing, which is the same for like time recording and document drafting and everything else. It's all in context, which I think is the most powerful bit. But hey, all good. I'll crack on. So I'm Phil. I'm going to talk about the UX and apps. Obviously, that's where all the cool kids live, and we focus on usability and our application extensions. So as Ben said, we've got a whole ton of quality of life stuff in terms of fixes and features that I won't speak about, but I just want to call out a couple of items that are coming in 7.11. So we've got an email focus mode. So the team have been working hard really around enhancing the experience of drafting an email from inside of ShareDo. So we've got a lot of options in terms of meeting you where you work. You can use our Outlook add-in, you can go to Outlook. But what we want to do is, again, in context, enrich the experience of when you're drafting an email inside of ShareDo. And I've got a couple of screenshots to show you, but that's really around focusing on the content, making it more analogous to, you know, email clients like Google Mail and Outlook. So you're focusing on the content and interacting with templates, and also the reply email thread journey around that stuff. We're also adding a whole bunch of email filing deduplication features to the Outlook add-in to catch duplicate filing. So if somebody CCs your team and everybody's filing emails, multiple copies of the same email inside of your matter, then you can quickly end up with a whole bunch of duplicate documents, chronology items, the whole thing. So we're doing a whole bunch of things to catch that at the Outlook add-in and give you feedback around this. Hey, this item's already been filed. And a lot of this stuff as well is feedback directly from clients and prospects, also evaluating our product to do that. This next one is around it's a participant UX enhancement around when you associate entities to a particular work item. So when you do the inline search for things like, hey, I'm going to add a client or a witness or something like that, then we've extended that to include team support. So a lot of your initial assignment might be, hey, this is a new inquiry, it goes to the disputes team or disputes inquiries team or whatever else. So there's a whole bunch of stuff and a load of quality of life things coming down there. And then, as Ben said, there are a whole bunch of more chunky features that are coming down the pipe. So we've already been through the AI integration stuff that we are working really hard on. But again, that's all in context, which is the magic for me. I'm not just going out to another tool to use some general knowledge. We've got a whole bunch of default portals to utilize some of the new features that you've seen recently around reporting inside of the app. So that'll be a new workbench portal, a contentious kind of like your deal portal outlines, and a dispute one. And what you can do with that is go in and either create new portals, or you can apply the actual system portal definition for those portals. And we'll keep doing that in every kind of like release. We'll release new portal templates. Couple of big things as well to call out. I'll spotlight these in another slide, but we've got a new Word add-in for drafting. So we're splitting the journey between those who draft documents in the context of a work item. Hey, I'm drafting this this response to this letter in the context of a work item, versus the people who author the master templates in the first instance. So this is, again, bringing it in line with your Outlook add-in, where you can start the journey there, draft some content, use your templates, do time, meeting you where you work. You'll be able to start that journey directly in Word, link it to your case, use reusable content, record time, do follow-up tasks and activities, and really get that seamless integration, but separate the experience between drafters and document authors. Again, another one from lots of feedback that we've received around chronology enhancements from our client group. So when we're working with a large number of chronology items, it sometimes can be difficult to find the things that we want, and also the secondary actions associated to them. So we're doing lots of stuff around filtering, searching, whether that's just a free text control, or the way that we filter and search across participants and timelines. But also seeing the associated time entries with those chronology items. So if I'm reviewing a cost file, for instance, I can use the chronology to get a really good view of where we're spending and what we're doing. So a whole ton of chronology enhancements coming. Some of the other things that we're quite excited about, just to reduce the complexity of some of your work type hierarchies, is a master detail portal enhancement. So if you're working across things like plot sales, where you've got a parent and a child, or a master and a detail, whichever word is I can use these in this context, then we're going to just abstract the complexity of me navigating away to another work item where we can embed that kind of all the features inside of a single portal. And that will unlock you doing things like, hey, you can use the portal engine then for like lower level tasks. Like I'm doing an investigation, I've got lots of different investigations, and they all have a particular view. So specific things that I can look at. And then we're starting to flush. This is really early stages around things like calendar V2. So we're looking at enhancing the calendar features inside of ShareDo, whether that's appointments, booking, visualizing your key dates and things like that. So that's what we're doing. Hi, Ben, can you click for me, please? Seamless. That's really good. So just to spotlight this 7-Eleven. So in 7-Eleven, we've got this email focus mode. It just really is around bringing it in line with meeting you where you work. You can do all of the stuff inside of ShareDo. You can also pop out into Outlook. But it's really focusing on the content. So removing all of the clutter, improvements in your email in terms of the trail, and then also some usability enhancements around the way that you reply and forward, whether that's in chronology or in this focus mode. So just zooming in on that. Quick one, can you pop again, please, Ben? And again, just focusing on or just giving you a quick insight into some of the like in-flight focusy good stuff. This is an example of one of the out-of-the-box like workbenches using all of the new magic around reporting that you can go and configure with the power of list views, and also a quick spotlight on the new Word add-in for document drafters. And that's me. I'm going to hand over to Fran. Fran's going to walk you through all of the finance features. Okay, Ben, I'm done.
Thank you, Phil. Bear with me and I shall swap the screen share.
No, we're
right?
ahead. Yeah, we're ahead of time, so we usually have a tea break, but we'll push that back and motor on with you, Fran. Am I still sharing? Or do you want me to?
You are. Could you click check? Would you mind sharing the slides better? Then I'll just swap when I'm doing a demo at the end.
No, that's absolutely fine.
It'll work a little bit.
5-minute tea break is coming in a little while. Finance time. Over to you, Fran.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning. I'm Fran Eastwood. I'm the product manager for the finance features. Now, in the previous forums, we've talked a lot about some of the big new features that are coming, and that work's still ongoing. But alongside that, we're still also working on smaller business as usual improvements. So today, I just wanted to tell you about 3 of those. So we're looking at improvements to how our invoice payments work. That's currently in design. We're also looking at some improvements to how financial transactions are reversed and how that's handled. And again, that's in the design stage. And we've also been doing some improvements to our time recording module, some smaller improvements. Now, there's 2 improvements I'm going to show you at the end, one of which is already released, but that got released in between this forum and the previous one. So it'd be worthwhile showing you for anybody that's not taken that latest build, 7.10. And there's also another one that's going to be coming in 7.11, which I will show you. Ben, if you could just click the next slide, please. So talking about some of those improvements that are coming, the ones that are in design, one that's caused us, or we've been working on quite a lot, is some improvements to invoice payments. And the reason we've been doing this is a couple of reasons. One is that we've had requests to improve this. And secondly, we've had some support calls. So it highlights that it's an area that needs a bit of attention. So we are trying to address some customer feedback so we can improve it and make it work as it needs to do. As part of this review, we've recognised that the way in which we are handling any reversals of invoice payments isn't adequate. So we're going to improve how that works, making sure that any reversals subsequently address any allocations. So if an invoice was paid, that any allocated invoices are reversed as you'd expect. And there's a lot of work with reversals that we've realised we need to introduce. And that comes secondary to some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about in a minute in regards to reversals that we're looking to improve. But what currently happens when a payment's reversed is there's no contra entry for that payment or that invoice payment. So what happens is there is a status update and it will say that it's been reversed. If you were to look at the associated chart of account transactions, those reversals are coming in and out. But if you were just looking purely at a list view that showed invoice payments, there'd only be one entry. So we're going to enhance that so that optionally you can have a full contra entry. So you'd see the original payment going in and the payment coming out as well. We also want to allow users to have different types of search criteria when they're paying an invoice. So at the moment, when you enter which payer has paid the invoice payment, there's a filter that shows you all the invoices that have been issued to that particular person. But that's also including invoices that might be on a completely different matter. And that's causing some issues, particularly for some of our debt recovery sites. So we're going to enhance that search so that optionally you can refine it so that you can only see the invoices outstanding on that particular matter. And also that potentially you can see invoices on that matter that might be being issued to a different payer, because sometimes somebody other than who the invoice was issued to might have sent you the actual payment for that. Next slide, please, Ben. So on to invoice reversals, I sort of touched on that on the previous one, and some of the reasons that we're addressing this has been highlighted when we've looked at the invoice payments. The big thing that we don't have at the moment, because of how the reversals are handled, is we don't have the ability for a user to enter a user-defined date when they action a reversal. So what happens in the background is the reversal is dated as of the date you physically did it on the system, and there's no way for the user to sort of alter that. And that becomes complicated if things such as invoice calculations on interest are being done, because potentially an invoice is marked as paid through a period when it should have been reversed. So we need to allow users to control what dates a reversal should be presented as of. And it's also the opportunity then to let people put reasons for reversals and extra narratives and different notes on that ledger if they want. And part of the reason we're introducing these sort of more full reversals is some of the things we're doing in the roadmap coming is the ability to have full client and office ledgers, or trust and operating ledgers, depending on where in the world you are. And as part of that, we'll need to have the full movement of in and out transactions presentable in a ledger. So some of this work is also sort of laying some foundational pieces ahead of our introduction of client and office accounting ledgers. Okay, next slide, please, Ben. So now I'm just going to show you some of the time recording changes that we have been working on. And these are smaller changes, but again, these are both coming from things that have been fed back from customers. So I shall share my screen. Okay, so the first item I wanted to show you, this has already been released. I've just come into Modeler, and I'm gonna open up the global feature for time recording. So in the work type configuration, I'm just gonna open up private client, general. We've always had an option to define a default time category. So you can have multiple time categories on your database. In fact, I'm in the wrong one, bear with me. Got two databases, one's in dev, and this one I wanted to show you is this one. So we've always had the ability to define a default time category for a particular work type. But this field previously only got obeyed when you were creating time entries via workflow. So what that meant is any user recording time manually, they just saw all the time categories on the database, and it just defaulted to the first one in the list. So we've enhanced this field so that its usability is expanded to include any manual transactions. So that means if you've got a particular work item that should default to one of the categories on your database, it will now be obeyed when you're doing a manual transaction. But in doing that, we recognize that if you've got lots of different time categories on your database, it's quite likely that some of those should be reserved only for use in certain types of work. So in addition to allowing you to specify a default that will work on manual time recording, we've also allowed you to decide to restrict certain time categories from a certain work item. So how that will work is when you click to restrict, you can then choose for this particular type of work, which time categories should they be able to time record against. So I'm going to just say that this one can only do client billable and non-billable. And I will say it should default to client billable. Now, if I save that now, and then if I go into a matter of that work type, when I begin time recording now, did it not save? I don't think it did. Bear with me. I might not have clicked save, which is a little bit embarrassing as I'm doing this. There we go.
It's all right, Fran, because I was vaguely blessed by the demo gods, which basically means that the curse of demos
Yes.
is going to hit someone else.
Yeah, it jumps in and hits me. Maybe I didn't refresh this properly. Let's try again, and if not, well, I shall find out why that went wrong, because of course I tested it before this morning and it worked beautifully, but as is
I always think the demo gods should always curse Phil, personally. I think that's how it should work. But okay.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, the default one hasn't quite worked, so I need to find out why that's broken. But what you'll see is the one that I said they couldn't post to, the billable one, that's no longer there. So we've made those changes just really to support the fact that if you do design lots of multiple categories, rather than users always having to navigate this huge list and potentially record against an incorrect category, you've got the ability to decide which ones they've got sight of and which ones they haven't. So that change is already live, so you should have that if you've already got 710. Now, the next change I'm going to show you, that's not live, and this is in regards, this coming though in 7.11. This is in regards to this time recording narrative. So you'll see that the box, when you want to add a narrative, is quite small, and for some types of time recording, that's probably fine, but there are some types of work where you need to record quite lengthy descriptions, and as you put lots of lines in here, it becomes quite difficult to sort of scroll this because you've got a tiny little box and you've got to go up and down. So what we've introduced, if I come over here and into this database, in the time recording features, we've optionally allowed you to decide what view you see of the narrative when you're doing time recording. Is it standard? So that was the one that we just saw, or is it this extended narrative view? So if I just save this here, and hopefully the demo gods are not being super mean to me. In fact, it's already open. Okay, so what we've allowed is, rather than you having the small box down here, you could come into here and you have a quite large field to type in, and this field will grow as you record and as you add further words in here. So what this means is, if you're used to having a big document open as you type the narrative in, you can do that here without having to scroll, and it's easily visible throughout all your time recording details. And again, this is off the back of customer feedback where they've struggled with the narrative box. So we've introduced this so that if your firm are one that typically need to see quite detailed narratives on a time entry, that you've got this option to be able to see it as this extended narrative. And of course, it's not just when you're recording it that this is useful. If you open up an existing time record and they've got that detailed narrative, it would display in this view as well. So again, the users can see everything in one big list. Okay, that's the end of what I wanted to show you. So I think now we are actually moving on to that 5-minute break we promised. Is that right, Ben?
So for those of you who haven't met me before, I'm Ash Kieran. I'm primarily the product manager for integrations and workflow at ShareDo /Clio Operaate. As a team, we have been incredibly busy. We obviously always get rolling requests from customers for new integrations and stuff like that. And a big theme that we've had in recent months has been around anti-money laundering, AML, KYC, know your customer type integrations across a whole bunch of different jurisdictions. There have been a number of drivers for this kind of activity. Take, for example, the amendments to the AML CTF legislation coming into force in Australia specifically. So as I get started, let's talk about some of the integrations that we have worked on this year. So as I mentioned, AML has been a big driver. There's two listed there at the top: Access Pay Suite, which is formerly known as Pay 360, and Amicus, two different ID verification providers. They're things that we'll see a theme on as we continue through this today. Beyond that, we've got KADOE, K-A-D-O-E, a vehicle inquiry service related to checking the registered keeper at the date of inquiry, useful across a number of our different practice areas. Elite's 3E product, which I'm sure loads of you will have heard of before, something that we've had integrations with for quite some time, and just something we've made further enhancements to in this past sort of few months. Next, I'll talk about ShareDo developing a webhook plugin. This is something that we've been working on to allow folks to more easily integrate with third-party services that you want to call back to ShareDo and create events in ShareDo and send messages back to your platform. And the big one that a lot of people will have heard about this year will be Twilio, largely because some of you may have used Text Local previously for SMS integration on your ShareDo platforms. Text Local was acquired by WebEx a few years ago, and they made the decision to sunset that platform as of November 2025. In reality, it didn't actually get switched off until about 2 weeks ago, but we did ensure that we had Twilio available well before the deadline that Text Local was switched off. So some of you may have switched over to using Twilio for your SMS provision. If any of you haven't, but still looking to use SMS, do just get in touch with us or your CSM, and we'll look to sort you out and tell you how you can get that installed and set up on your environments too. Next, I'm going to talk about some of our recent workflow work. So never quite as shiny as talking about the new integrations that we build, but incredibly important. Workflow actions make your life easier, help managing around creating automations in the platform. We released a number of new actions in 7.11. Some of these help deprecate some old data table upload work that you'll have seen. So in, I think, a previous version, it might have been 7.9, we released our data table upload v3. We still didn't deprecate the older versions of data table upload, largely down to the fact that they had some built-in plans or ways to upload certain types of things. Maybe they were goods and services, maybe they were uploading people in ShareDo. So some of the workflow actions that we've created in 7.11 allow you to do things like just that. So being able to create people, create organizations, create addresses within ShareDo via workflow actions. So that's some of the exciting stuff that we've done there. We've also made enhancements to a couple of workflow actions, things like create work item now being able to handle jurisdiction and subtype, and remove result set limitation on paging and adding paging to find a work item. So that we've kind of removed that limit on if you use find a work item, that search can sometimes return hundreds of items. So instead we've removed the limit and added paging to it. Talking about some of the stuff that's in flight at the moment. Right now we're building integrations for both InfoTrack and Claims Portal. MOJ Claims Portal integration will see releases over the course of this year. We're going to do several releases as we implement more and more functionality for it. We will be starting with claimant representative side, and compensator side will follow after that. For InfoTrack, we're going to be enriching the data that's passed across to the InfoTrack platform from ShareDo. At the moment, it's primarily limited to the matter ID and the address of the property, but we're going to be starting to pass across things like the solicitors, the buyers, the sellers, the value, the dates, and more, making completing forms within InfoTrack much simpler. The other thing that we're going to do as part of the InfoTrack integration is making it so that you can automatically raise disbursements for those searches that you conduct or any other fees that are incurred in the InfoTrack platform, and move that data back into ShareDo without having to manually enter that data twice. And lastly on this screen, and perhaps most excitingly, we're beginning to open the opportunity for verified professional services partners to develop plugins for ShareDo. And the one that we've got listed here, First AML, as I said, there's a theme going here, AML providers, is an AML provider specifically to the APAC region, and that's being built by Alterspective at the moment. So those are the kind of highlights that we've got for stuff that we've been working on in terms of integrations that we've built, integrations that we're working on, and workflow actions that we've got there. So that is probably me at about my 10 minutes. So I'm going to hand over to, I believe it is Yaron next to talk about documents. Thanks, folks.
Afternoon, everyone. Let me see if I can share my screen. Did I just say afternoon? Okay, hopefully I'm sharing. So my name's Yaron. I look after the world of documents primarily, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we've got coming in the new upcoming release and some of the things that we've been working on as well. So as part of the new release, we've got a whole host of quality of life items and defect fixes, but I wanted to highlight some of the bigger ticket features to talk about. So first, we've got greater parity for the iManage and NetDocs repository providers with Office 365. So we're bringing support for flat view, so you can configure your document repository widget to flatten all of the folders and see all of the files in one big long list. And also proper search support for both iManage and NetDocuments, so you can search across the workspace based on your file titles or even text within the files themselves. We've also introduced server-side paging across all of the three main providers, iManage, NetDocs, and Office 365. And this is primarily to support scenarios where you have workspaces or libraries with many, many, many files, so in the thousands, and it potentially starts to cause performance problems to load everything up at once. So if you do have that kind of scenario, that's a good one to look into and experiment with. Finally, role sourcing support for document templates. This has been a big ask, I believe, by many people. So at the moment, you can stipulate various role restrictions on your document template. So you can say, oh, I only want my document recipient to be a client or a witness or a claimant. But in the participant picker, you'll get all of your teams or users. If you don't specify particular restrictions, what you can now do is go to the document recipient or email recipient roles in Modeler, stipulate that you don't want certain roles or ODS entity types to surface in the participant picker. So this will naturally exclude things like contributors or readers, which is a common scenario for people. Some of the other things that we've been working on that will be hitting in future releases are audit events for document actions. So when users are previewing, opening, downloading, and I believe also when you delete or upload files. The other thing we're looking at is first-class data composer support for document bundles. So at the moment, when you're tagging your title pages or document or section separators, you're still using old tag loader type tags. So we're looking to bring proper data composer support for that. And following on from that, we'll finally be looking to probably deprecate tag libraries and tag loaders. So early notice if you still have document templates using the old tag loaders or libraries to maybe switch over to Data Composer over time. Finally, we've been working on a feature around file naming, which I wanted to highlight or focus on in greater detail. So in ShareDo or Operaate, file names are configured throughout the system when you're doing document generation, when you are configuring how inbound or outbound emails are processed or archived. And, you know, there's different configuration for that in different places, people having to manage them separately. What we wanted to do was to centralize all of that configuration into one single place so that you can standardize how files are being named across the system. Furthermore, if you've been sort of working with ShareDo for a while, particularly, you know, in the area of document templates, you'll have probably seen those sort of titleless file name type tags, like these magic tags, and it's not quite obvious maybe what they're doing or what the logic is behind those. So we want to remove that legacy hard coding and provide full transparency over how file names are being generated and what's going on. Furthermore, we're going to provide control over how backend DMS constraints are handled. So this is treating things like reserved characters. What do you do when you hit those reserved characters? Do you strip them out, replace them with other things? And other things such as length limits and path limits. Finally, we're going to provide some ability to manage how conflict resolution is handled. So quite often we automatically build in timestamps to your file names, but we'll now give you the option of enabling that or disabling it, or using different options to handle uniqueness guarantees. As Ash said, if you've got any questions for me, just feel free to put them in the chat or other questions, and I'll be happy to answer. I think that's me.
Thanks, Sharon. Who have we got up next? Is it data and analytics? Are we doing a double act on this, Ash? Do we decide, or is it me?
Talking and on mute, I apologize. Yeah, I think I've shared the screen and Yaron has jumped off. So yeah, I'm just sticking my oar in a little bit to lend a hand on data and analytics pod for a little while. So I guess we jump straight into it. So you'll probably notice that unlike some of the other product areas, there isn't loads of product updates that comes through in the data and analytics pod, but that doesn't mean we are not hard at work. The team is growing too, and the simple fact is that most of the work that takes place in this pod is just quite chunky pieces of work. So to talk about that, the two major things that we are working on in this area are performance enhancements for the way that data migration works. So this can be things like optimizing participant roles and other large overhead processes that take place when we do big data loads into ShareDo. Anything you want to add on that before I move on, Ben?
No, I think it's really interesting. I mean, like people ingest a huge amount of data, and yeah, we need it's trying to balance like the massive amount of data integrity that has to go in, because we don't want to put rubbish data into a platform that causes huge problems with the sort of performance there. Don't think we got that balance quite right. So yeah, there's a big intensive piece of work at the moment that I think will make a 7-Eleven patch, if not some of 7-Eleven itself, to speed up some of these things for when you're doing like either your one-off big migration or incremental load as you bring on sort of practice groups. Back to you, Ash.
And the other bit that we want to talk about for stuff that's happening in data and analytics is about Fabric as a data source for the new report builder. So you'll have heard a load about Fabric in previous user forums and how we want to move to that for some of the data processing and how you access reporting and data and stuff like that too. But in a previous edition of the user forum, Dunk from the UX and apps team presented to you some stuff around this. So these screenshots might look familiar to you from the previous reporting piece that Dunk delivered. Now, at the moment, these reports are generated based on content that lives within list views in ShareDo. On the far right-hand side there, we've got ShareDo's report designer. And what we're going to be looking to make available as part of this piece of work is to allow you to use Fabric as a data source for the report designer, so that you can really pull out quite complex data, complex queries to build reports and dashboards within ShareDo, showing you the type of stuff that you as a business want to put there. So I have asked Ollie, and hopefully in a second he will share it, a link to the YouTube recording of the report builder bit that Dunk presented in a previous edition of the user forum if you want to watch that back. But yeah, hopefully we'll be extending reporting and analytics to use Fabric as a data source.
Yeah, just to add to that very quickly. So whilst I don't think that's a replacement for Power BI, at least for lots of the sort of basic reports, you can choose not to use Power BI. And also a lot of our things like the time radar and stuff like that will be moving to use all of the internal reporting engine. What does that mean? It means you've got more customized configuration options to build portals, change these radars. I mean, hopefully, people are on. I think this came out in 7.10, did it? This report builder. I mean, I've seen lots of people create not weird, wonderful things out of it. Anyway, that's enough for me. Over to you, Jen.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Would someone just mind doing the slides, Ash, if you've got them?
Yeah, I'm still on it, so I'll click through. Jenny, just give me a shout.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, first of all, hello, everyone. And I need to explain that I'm in a hotel room and I cannot manage to blur my background. So you can see my lovely shower in the background. I'm going to briefly talk about kind of some of the customer success type side of things, and a little bit around preparing your organisation and also your lawyers for doing a Clio Operaate project. And this has come off the back of, I think, some of the kind of observations we have around seeing how projects work, some of the feedback for customers. And one of the things I'm going to ask at the end of this is, what else would you like to see and what can we do to help you in your journeys of kind of getting your project live? So if you can go to the next slide, please, Ash. Thank you. So the first thing we've kind of learnt from our implementations is that often the shape of those implementations across different customers, and actually even across different projects within customers, are different. So one of the things that our professional services team has been working on is producing a readiness assessment that we're going to use with customers. So that's going to come out in the near future. But I wanted to talk around some of the context of that and the things that we think are important in how quickly you can roll Operaate out. So first of all, I think it's looking at the structure that you have already organisationally. So, if we work with organisations where there's relatively immature kind of IT functions, and that doesn't mean that they're not good IT functions. It's just that, given the size and the different types of organisation we work with, sometimes there are really rigorous program structures and governance already in place. And I think that when you start an implementation, it's about understanding where you are in that journey so that we can adjust how we support you in that journey. So have you got kind of strong leadership in your organisation who are going to drive this change? Because one of the things that we really see makes adoption and getting value from the system really impactful is when you've got that really, really good, strong leadership who can drive change. And also just experience, right? So have you done a kind of transformation program before? So it's thinking about all of those things and, where you've got gaps and then putting in plans to address some of those gaps. The other part of it is vision. So it's that kind of idea of we're all heading towards the same place. So have you got a clear vision for the system you're implementing? Is that vision clearly written down and communicated to people understand it? And is there a whole firm buy-in? Because even though you might be putting your kind of PI practice live, you're probably going to have bits of that process that impact finance, that impact risk and compliance, that impact different types or areas of your organisation. So it's making sure that everybody understands why you're doing it. And that could be, you're getting off a legacy system. It could be the fact that you're looking for productivity gains. And then also in terms of the readiness, have you actually already got an established business change process? So have you got business change professionals? Do you have already patterns that work within your organisation? The third part is around project team and governance. So it's really thinking about what you have and what the gaps are that need to be filled and how we can help with that or how partners can help. So have you got a dedicated project or program manager? Have you got the tooling available to support the project? So, you're going to use our DevOps, so you're using Jira. How is your governance structure going to work? So have you got a steerco in place? What is your kind of meeting and your governance cadence going to look like? Your reporting? Does the project team have previous experience of doing something? similar. And if they haven't, then we need to have discussions with you about how we can fill in some of those gaps and how to build some of that knowledge up. And also, really importantly, have the project teams got dedicated capacity? Because when you're planning out at the start of your implementation or even during the implementation, you need to be aware if people have got other things going on. And we see that quite frequently where people are spread quite thinly, and it can have an impact on how well you can roll out. And then finally, it's that kind of understanding of the business need. So have you got a clear understanding of the business need? Have you got requirements documented? Is there a clear understanding of the to-be process? So a really common one where we see kind of delays and friction is that when we start to do a first project and we start to do kind of matter inception or onboarding, that often that's a point of time at which you suddenly realize that that conversation has to happen across the whole of the organization rather than just for one individual bit. So I think it's just kind of thinking through some of those things beforehand. And then things like, is there a dedicated product owner as well? So we're putting together an assessment sheet that will help you before you start a project. And essentially it will give you a scoring. And then what you can then do is work through those scorings and work out how you mitigate some of those risks from kind of not having some of these things. So we go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So I guess the other part to this is that, an Operaate project is a joint exercise between the, IT, your partner as the business. And one of the things that we get asked very frequently is how kind of fee earners or kind of business individuals are used in projects, what the expectation is on them, how much time they need to give to the project. And often I think, or sometimes we see that those people aren't necessarily prepared for doing that role. So this is 4 ways that we see people from the business being used in organizations. So frequently have product owners, so they tend to be embedded within the project team. They're somebody who has, real ownership for the whole solution. They're likely to spend a significant amount of time with the solution. They're responsible for being, kind of iteratively involved with looking at what's coming out the other end. Sometimes they're dedicated, sometimes part-time. Some of that depends on the size of your organization, the money essentially you've got to spend on the product. But the more time you can get from someone in the business to be embedded in the project, the better. And I think choosing that person is really kind of a really important part of it. You have subject matter experts, so they're people who might dip more in and out of the project. So they'll attend workshops, they might provide ad hoc guidance in the project, they'll give ongoing feedbacks, they'll get involved in UAT testing. So for kind of giving them an idea of where they're going to need to be involved and what their roles and responsibilities is. So those are 2 ones that probably most of you are familiar with. Now this third one, some people have and some people don't, but it's a really, really great thing to have. So lots of our clients have the concept of a key user. And they're people within the business who have maybe been involved in the original project as UAT testers. They're interested in technology, they're really enthusiastic, they get to know the system well. But their role essentially is to act as a kind of first port of call for anybody who's got issues. So, we recently, with the Clio acquisition, switched over to using Gmail and Google Calendar, which was a learning journey, I know for me. And there were people in our organization who just use that stuff all the time that we go to and say, oh, just, how do we do this or that? So it's having those people who are really easily accessible and within your day-to-day world who can just help remove a little bit of that friction. And I think they're a really important role in adoption because it makes it more of a kind of conversational, just quick, I need it now and I can get it before you kind of go on to the next level of support. And then finally, we've got UAT testers. So they might not have been involved in the project previously, but they're going to run a script that the IT and the business project team have created. They're going to validate the system using the context of their roles. So those are the kind of 4 key areas we see. And Ash, if you go to the next slide, please, thank you. So for each of those, it's really important to make sure they're prepared for what they need. And one of the things that we're putting together at the moment is some training for these people that will just give them a really short kind of video overview of what to expect if you've been asked to do this role, what kind of things you need to do to prepare, and how you essentially gain the right skills, gain the right outcomes from having that role. So for product owners, the important things are they need to get fee earning relief. So we often see people who are highly stressed, really struggling because they've been asked to do this product owner role, but they've not been given any fee earner relief, and that can be very very detrimental to the project because they're very stressed and under a lot of pressure. They need to have a top-down understanding of the project, and what I mean by that is, so it may be that you have a really big financial goal to get off your legacy system, and there's big impacts on not doing that. And so that product owner needs to be aware of that financial impact and to think about that when they're talking about, what the requirements are, how things need to work, etc. So it's really important they understand that overall goal. They need to understand financial or time constraints, and they need to be clear on the expectations of that role. So what is it they're being asked to do? What is it they're being asked to produce? What is it they're being asked to attend? Subject matter experts, exactly the same thing. So, and having an understanding of what time commitment, and also being very, very clear about the areas of ownership for those SMEs. So a good example of this is where you start to get people like finance involved in projects. So we might use them as advisory early on in the project. We need to get sign off for any changes that are going to happen for financial processes, but also they're going to need to be involved in that UAT testing at the end, because as the kind of things that we're doing in Operaate push through into the pre-MS, they need to be involved in making sure that that fits and that their downstream processes work. Key users need to have that kind of familiarity with the product. They need to have an understanding of the kind of size and complexity of it. They need to just know it really and have been in there and used it every day. And again, you might want to consider giving them some fee earner relief for their duties. And then I think for UAT testers, these tend to be the people who kind of arrive on a particular day, probably don't know too much about what's going on. So it's really important that at the start of those UAT cycles, it's made really clear to them what the expectation is on them, and also how they need to communicate back problems or issues that they're having, and that they understand the scope of testing and implementation. So that's kind of the business roles. And then I've got one more slide, which if we go to the next one. So we're going to put some courses onto the Academy. If you've not used the Academy before, that's the URL for it, and you can get that from your CSM. If you go to the last slide, sorry, Ash, I forgot that one was there. So the other thing that is really important, so we've got our are we ready? We've got what our business are doing, but it's managing the change. So we often see implementations go in and then there is post-implementation friction. And it's really important to be on top of that right from the start of the project and making sure that the business and your organization is ready. So first thing is understanding the why. So you will have a reason behind implementing Operaate. It might be financial, it might be efficiencies. And it's really, really important that the partners, the team leads, the top-down management make that really clear to the business about why you are implementing something, because there will be points of friction, or there might be people who have to do a bit more work so that their partner has to do, I don't know, a day's less work a month. And it's really important that everybody understands why the project's being done. If you know that you've got people who are going to be skeptical, that are going to be problematic, get them on board early. So get them involved and try and address some of their concerns. We need to make sure we focus on the project as well as the technology. So obviously, we kind of get bedded in, we're going to do design and we're going to build the product, we're going to go into UAT. But actually, we need to make sure that we're constantly stepping back from that and thinking about how the end-to-end business process is going to work, what stakeholders within the business are going to be impacted, and making sure that they're prepared for that change, and ensure that we've got the kind of comms and decision making where we need it to do that. And we need to be really clear on the training for the system and how that's going to work. We need to try and make that as intuitive as possible, so that if somebody gets stuck on a little bit of something, they've got access to something that, or someone that's going to help them out. And planning business change. So again, we quite often see programs of work where we've got kind of a big program plan, but maybe there's the business change plan isn't quite there. So it's really important at the start of the project to think about how you are going to get those users and the organisation to adopt the platform at the end, and that needs to be a key part of your project plan. So one thing to consider is your project or programme big enough that you need a dedicated change manager? Make sure that you're looking at the kind of whole business view when you plan out that, because inevitably there will be downstream impacts, so things like reporting, etc. And then the most important thing is just constant communication to everybody about what's going on, what they should expect, why it's happening, and actually kind of consciously stepping back and thinking about what that communication looks like, what the pathways are. And then my last point is it doesn't stop at go live. So, you know, once any system goes in, there will naturally be points of friction, things that need to change. There will be periods of time when people find adoption hard because it's different to what they've been doing, and there's a kind of like learning curve to it. And I think I saw a really good comment from one of the VLEX guys, Daniel Hobson, around kind of getting a good feel for the system, and that you only get that by really frequently using it, and also kind of being curious about it and trying things out when you're not in pressure situations. So it's giving people the opportunity to do that. And once it is live, just continuously going back and gradually removing those points of friction in a kind of feedback loop that does have an end to it. So keep iterating, keep listening to the business. So next slide, please. So we'd really like to do some more around business change this year. So if anybody has got friction points they've experienced, or there are things that you would like us to do to support us better, I would really love it if people would contact me. Okay, over to Stu.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
You can hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we can.
Only hear Stu for a brief amount of time because he's left the stage. Come on back, Stu. Come on back. Oh, he's back. He's back.
Did that work?
Yeah, you're all good. I'm going to leave the stage, Stu. The stage is all yours.
Thanks. Good morning. Yeah, so I guess in terms of timing, this kind of slot should maybe have come after the product team's piece, because effectively what I'm going to talk about is Onboarding Accelerated. And then Onboarding Accelerated for us is kind of a new product team that we've been devising. And some of you may have heard of me talking about it, but we're trying to formally kind of launch it and talk a bit more about it today. So I guess probably worthwhile defining what we mean by onboarding and Onboarding Accelerated. We all sat down some time ago, and we wanted to talk about the time that it's taking our customers to get from when they're interested in Operaate to when they first transact live matters in Operaate. And also the time that it takes for our customers to onboard new departments or new work types, and look at that, because as we scale as a business, we all have that objective to be able to do this faster, make it easier, make it simpler. So we've kind of made that definition of what onboarding is, and we decided that we should form a proper product team that looks at this. So this slide here, if I can advance the slides, there we go, seems a bit stark and dour to begin with, as is my nature. But effectively, we recognize, right, implementing Operaate is complex. Yeah, so implementations take a long time, or longer than you would like, right? We'd all like to be able to just click and get out to our organizations as fast as possible. The configurations you create are complicated, right? So anyone who's tried to kind of learn and configure Operaate, it's not super simple. Yeah, there's a lot you can do, and that's because it's a complicated system. And that means it takes a lot of expertise. It takes a lot of knowledge. We run configurator training courses, which are days long for people. When we onboard our own staff and have to teach them, it takes a long time to get people to learn the system. And it's so vast now that there's entire areas of the system that I have no idea how they work. So we need to make this simpler. You know, we've seen the trend where, you know, customers get a bit frustrated. It takes longer than they want to get their implementations live. It costs them longer. They, you know, they can't scale it out to their businesses as fast as they would like. And we recognize that, and we have kind of a shared goal there. You know, we want to be able to get this out as fast as possible. We want to make it simpler. We want to be able to scale it out and, you know, frankly, get as many seats as possible. but for you guys, get it out to kind of your firms and make it easier to manage and own and expand. So what we want to do is make this all better, right? So we kind of sat in a room and we looked at all the painful things, and we kind of came up with some ideas about things we want to do. We want to be able to create some tools that help you define your Operaate implementations, help you scope them, help you build the configuration for them. We want to be able to kind of simplify the onboarding experience when you get a new environment. So how do I set up this? How do I do this? Help me create new work types. Help me do things, rather than, you know, let's read a help guide. Let's let's digest it. Let's understand it. Let's, you know, practice it. You know, just being able to be guided through that process. And we kind of recognize as well, you know, the way that we move configuration through environments is complicated. Yeah, it's difficult to understand, like, what have I changed? What have people changed? How do I select the things that changed and move them? How do I know what's different between the environments? So we want to look at making a simpler journey. And equally, we have this journey in sales where we can talk about our accelerator packs and, you know, being able to have these packs for PI and real estate, and we've got them, but they're not readily consumable by an end consumer. Yeah, you can't go to a marketplace and go, hey, I want the PI pack, or I want the real estate pack, or I want the integration to NetDocs. Yeah, that all relies on us or conversations with us, and we want to make all of that more self-service. Yeah, so you can pick the things you want Operaate to do. You can pick from a kind of set of accelerators. I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. But this is kind of the goal, right? So the goal is a new product team, and we want to make this all simpler. So we've had a bunch of ideas, and this list is not exhaustive and not complete. Literally, when we went through this, it was like looking at improvements right across our business, from internal initiatives to external things. But these were the things that kind of I thought I should put on this slide for this group of people. So things like environments, right? Called it environments 2.0, but when you get an Operaate environment these days, you'll probably notice it's full of stuff. Yeah, it's full of maybe some test data. It's got, if you're unlucky, you've probably seen the Mitra accounts, or the Wendy accounts, or you might have seen the organizations. We tend to tidy this stuff up, but it's a manual activity to kind of clear down a lot of the kind of scripted base data, and we don't want that to be the case. We want to have a slick onboarding experience where you get a new environment, you give us your organization name, you tell us the packs and the types of work you're interested in, you get guided through the process to integrate your single sign-on, to integrate your SCIM, you get guidance to integrate into your DMS. You get this kind of experience that is like onboarding, so you actually get walked through the process of setting up your environment. So we're looking at stripping all that back and making new environments blank, and allowing you to build up from that and have guidance. In kind of definitions, I think Jen just talked about actually, and I've tagged it here as an onboarding accelerated initiative, but in reality, it was started before that, and kind of having a readiness assessment for our customers. So looking at, like, you know, what you need in your organization to be ready to implement Operaate, what kind of people and skills do you need, what's the, you know, what do you need to consider, how do you think about team structures or work hierarchy, and, you know, those kind of things. And something that we've been also working on is being able to get tooling to help you scope that. So being able to describe what you want, and using AI tools as well in this to kind of describe what you want and produce artifacts like the high-level design documents, like the detailed design documents, so that they become consistent artifacts, and you can drive that through. configuration rather than having to start from a blank slate every time. We're looking at loads of different modular assistants. So being able to, walk through a journey to create new work types, walk through journeys to create new workflows, get guidance when you're creating data composer expressions or calculated fields, and being able to kind of use AI to generate those things and validate those things. I've talked a bit about our marketplace ideas, so being able to pick from an accelerator pack store and integrations and plugins. And we want to look at some of the configuration items we've got at the moment. So import, export, it's good. Like, I mean, a lot, actually, a lot of products don't do this at all. Like being able to move configuration from one environment to another is something that you always have to get professional services involved in. We've got some tooling to do it, and it's got some limitations, and it's clunky in some places and difficult sometimes, but it's broadly, we need to revisit how we do that and how we can kind of compare environments and make that process of moving configuration and managing configuration simpler. Document onboarding and document assistance. So a large part of every Operaate implementation is always taking documents, precedents, retagging them, getting them aligned with data composer tags. We'd like to automate that. Like to be able to have a way to bring in your documents, retag them, recognize the tags you had, map those tags, automate the production of those tags, take that effort from you and make it simpler to onboard your document templates. And Nicola's been working on this initiative around all of our accelerators. So our accelerator packs that we did have before were very coarse-grained, let's call it. So we'd have a PI pack or a real estate pack, and they were huge, but we're moving to a model where these are much more component-based, so almost like a menu, like a recipe that you can pick the items that you want in your pack. So do you want a certain dispute flow, a certain debt chase flow, and be able to add those kind of into the components of a pack that you want. So we're structuring those out. So those are kind of some of the top level ideas. We've talked about like other things like self-documenting your configuration, producing the document artifacts that describe what your ShareDo configuration is. There's loads of ideas. I'd love to hear from everyone out there in terms of like, what do you think? What's the painful things? Right? In terms of a schedule, right? Some of this stuff is still quite nebulous, and you'll note that I put Q2 as the kind of the first milestone on this, because we're still working through it, and there's a lot of work to do to get us to the point where we're shipping things. But certainly, I think the easiest things for us to target initially are, and a good place to start would be our blank environments and getting our core content packs right, so that when you get your new environments, it's got the basics, that you're guided through integrations, that you're guided in setting up your new environments and what to do first. And then we'll move into things like producing our readiness assessment, which is almost out there actually, but our scope it tooling, so you can produce high-level designs, and having embedded help assistants to help you create workflows and work types and so on. Our accelerator pack store. So effectively looking at all of these features around onboarding, and as I say, this stuff is work in progress. But the idea is having a dedicated team focused on reducing the time it takes to get live with new work types, or to get live in the first instance, to reduce the effort that it is, both from our side, from professional services, and from your side, from your project team's involvements, and also just to reduce the cognitive load on like how to understand the configuration in Operaate, so how complex it is, and just making that simpler and easier to understand. I think that's about all I had. So
that's really good. Thanks, Stu. Thank you. I think this is a new first, eh? We're 15 minutes early. I had a slide, but it's gone. But that's no stress. Like, I'm really conscious that we need more involvement from people on this call in what we do, right? Broadly, it's your product, right? So across this call, you've had me talk, you've had Stu talk, you've had Fran talk, you've had Euron talk, you've had Phil talk as product managers, and one of the key investment focuses, I think it's been Q1, Q2, is bringing on more product managers. They're there to work with you. If there's lots of comments in about this, can we do this? Does it do this? Can it do this? Hopefully the product managers will pick up those and reach out to those people where they're not the Spartacus attendees directly. But equally, feel free to contact those people and say, I saw you mention that you're working on this. Can I contribute to it? The more eyes, the more input, the better we can shape this stuff for the good of all. So yeah, that's a key ask. If you want to contribute, we'd love to hear from you. And I'll finish up with, as always, thanks for your support, for your investment and your trust on behalf of the Operaate and enterprise teams. We'll see you at the next user forum, which might actually be in person, but maybe that's the one after. But anyway, there's going to be one in person this year for the first time. All right, take care, everyone. Really appreciate it. And ending the event now.